Bow, 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 bow. Hey, everybody. Did you like how I just did my own theme song just there? I hope you did. Jay here with a quick interruption. I don't have ads, so I'm going to advertise myself in the middle of this podcast. Why not? This is somewhere north of 300 episodes when you're listening to this. And golly gee, it has been a journey, and I appreciate you coming with me on that journey for this whole time that you've been here. Maybe you've been here from the beginning. Maybe you've been here since like an episode ago. I'm just glad you're here. But I do have to say this. We here at Blockbusting, and there's literally a we. Chorkin, come around. Come around to the other side of the camera so we can see. Look, guys, I got a staff now, all right? I got interns, okay? I got producers. I got stuff to handle here at the space that I record at and elsewhere. And I want to be able to pay these people. And I, unfortunately, do not make the kind of money to pay these people myself. And that's where I hope that you can come in. By supporting the Blockbusting Patreon. Yes, that's right. We've got a Patreon. I haven't plugged it in a bit, but I'm going to start plugging it heavy now, because why not? I want to pay these folks, all right? And you can support the podcast for just as low as $1 a month, all right? $1 a month goes back into the show. I'm not even paying myself. I don't care about paying myself for this podcast. I care about giving a little something back to the people who help me out, because I'm getting a lot of help from people these days. And they deserve a little something for their efforts beyond just my eternal thanks and gratitude, which they're going to get anyway. So you can subscribe for $1 a month. You start getting access to bonus content from me, like I'm posting episodes of my game show Wrong that I'm doing here in Los Angeles that I'm not posting to the public. I'll start posting bonus episodes of me talking about stuff again. What's Good with Jay Light, where I just talk about what I liked that I saw on the television and the internet and stuff these days, because that's how you do for Patreon. We still have the JFlix level, the $5 tier, where you can get access to my full film, television, comedy special library. That's just $5 a month. It's cheaper than pretty much every streaming service out there, except for, I guess, Apple TV is $5 a month. And they have Severance and Ted Lasso, so you really can't go wrong there. And they got Coda. I mean, Coda, what a delight. But you know what I've got? Xanadu. And nobody else has that. Pfft, duh. I've got A Day Without a Mexican, Los Digits' least favorite movie. You listen to that episode, it's a great episode. But you just got to watch the movie, which I have on JFlix for $5 a month. I got a bunch of weird stuff. So go consider, please, subscribing to the Patreon for Blockbusting. The link is in the show notes. Or you can just go type into your little web browser right now, tippity-tap it into patreon.com/blockbusting. Again, that is patreon.com/blockbusting. And your support will go to helping me throw a little cash the way of the fine folks who help make this podcast happen. That's all I'm asking, is you throw me a little something so I can throw them a little something, okay? We're going direct, because, you know, this is like thoughts and prayers with guns. Like, saying thanks is only going to do so much. I want to give them cash, okay? At least buy them a coffee or something. So patreon.com/blockbusting. You can join and support for as little as $1 a month. And that's all there is, folks. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, raising his eyebrows real hard, I'm very excited to have him, Ian Abramson.
Yeah, excited to be here. You kidding me?
This is great. Already, this
I'm
is
excited.
great.
Look at us.
Look at us. Well lit, chilling, patterned shirts.
Yeah, it's very true. It's like we want to look nice, but we're not going further than like Target or the first page of whatever website we're on.
Oh yeah, this Old Navy.
Yes, exactly. No hate.
No hate
it
at
looks
all.
great.
That's-
You look excellent.
So do you.
This is one of my better shirts.
Where's that one from?
This one I can't remember with specificity, but
Perfect.
it's certainly in that realm. An Old Navy. It might have been a Sears.
Oh, Sears.
I know.
Nordstrom Rack, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. Going to J.C. Penney's. Is that even around anymore?
I think it is. I feel like I've seen a J.C. Penney somewhere. The Dillard's is the one you got to watch out for. Dillard's is on the way out. Unless you're in the South, Dillard's
I
is
see.
Dillard's
I
is
didn't
on
grow
the
up with the
decline.
Dillard's.
What was your regional
The
department
Merino
store?
Valley Mall had a Sears, a J.C. Penney. Now it has the public library and a gym.
Oh, okay.
Malls have gone downhill, but it's fun to watch how regional areas take advantage of that space when they try to. Rather than just letting it become an abandoned mall, they were like, let's get a library in here. I love that.
That's good.
Right?
That's
it's
really
genuinely
nice.
good.
Yeah. I feel like there was a mall where I went to college it was called the Holly Hill Mall, but we always called it the Holy Hell Mall because it was a disaster.
Yeah.
They could have put a library in there and it would have been good.
Right.
I would have appreciated that. You
Yeah.
could tell that it was the kind of mall that, like, when Montgomery Ward was around, they were thriving.
Yeah.
But no, not so much in the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s.
Yeah. Times were a changing.
Times were changing. And in this movie that you wanted to talk about today, wow, a movie with a legacy that is
Truly.
it's still coming around.
It is.
I remember when the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes.
We all thought, and by we I mean all the people who watched this movie when it came out originally, thought that it was going to be the end of the franchise. You
Yeah.
bring in the big guns, you bring in
Right.
Sean Connery, and you're set.
Right. This is a finale.
Yeah,
That's how it felt.
It plays like a finale.
It does.
And then all of a sudden, we hit the late 2000 or early 2010s. That
Yeah.
time frame. You start
Yeah.
hearing rumors about Crystal
Yeah.
Skull.
Right.
And now there's going to be another one.
Yeah.
Which actually, do you have any feelings before we get too far on the
Sure.
Last Crusade? Do you have any feelings about the new Indiana Jones that's coming out?
The whatever 5 will be, you mean?
Yeah, the one it's the same guy who directed Logan. I forget his name.
Oh, James
Mangold?
Mangold?
Yes, James
Mansfield?
Mangold. That's right.
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't believe I pulled that out.
I
Wow.
almost said James Cameron.
That is not because I'm like I don't have an encyclopedic memory of such things. I just got lucky that popped to the front of my head. You know, that like do not be impressed by that. That was luck. that was like watching somebody hit the lottery. That's fun and exciting, but it wasn't that I'm smart.
I'm still impressed whenever I see somebody win the lottery, though.
For sure,
I'm
of
like,
course.
wow, you did it.
Yeah, fair
you
enough.
knew.
Fair enough. Right. Man, that could have been me, but it's you. Power to you. Power to you.
Good work.
Okay. My favorite thing about Crystal Skull, because that was the first Indiana Jones I saw in theaters. I didn't catch any of the other ones.
Sure.
And I remember being so excited reading every interview. And there was this interview that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg did together in Entertainment Weekly. And the reporter, I remember reading it in Target. It was making me laugh so hard that I remember where I was standing as I was like thumbing through this Entertainment Weekly. And the reporter is like, all right, let's talk Indiana Jones. And George Lucas immediately is like, I just want to say, I know the fans are going to hate it. and Spielberg.
Bold place to start.
I know. And Spielberg is like, he speaks for him. I am excited about this movie. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be a weird movie.
It's going to be a dog. Yeah.
Man. So, yeah. How do I feel about 5? We'll see.
I
Who
guess we'll
knows?
see. I do trust James Mangold.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But let's dial the clock back. All right? This is Last Crusade we're here to talk about.
Absolutely.
A movie that you are on record now. As
officially.
as hating.
Hating.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I'm not somebody that takes joy in hating movies, especially if it's a franchise that I love.
Yeah. And
But-
are you a big Indiana Jones guy? Like, what's your history with that franchise?
So my history is I grew up in Southern California, which meant that every now and then I would get to go to Disneyland. Not a lot, but Indiana Jones rules, right? And it's fun and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
cool. It's the only character in pop culture with a whip. That
Yeah.
rules. It's also like a non-BDSM whip. You almost have to learn that any other time you see a whip, it's going to have a
gonna be-
different connotation. Nobody else, because it's not great. Like, what are you going to do with a whip in a fight? You know what I mean?
Not
like
much unless you're Indiana Jones.
No, exactly. So I had caught scenes, and I think I'd seen one of them. But in high school, I got them for Christmas in a DVD set. Those three.
Okay.
And I watched the first one day, and then the next day the second one, and Last Crusade on day 3 to give myself just enough time to digest. And it was like, I was like making a thing of it, you know? I mean, I've mentioned Target about 3 times. Clearly, I didn't have an exciting childhood, but things like that I would get pumped about, and I would be like, yeah, this is, and I would go home and I would watch them. The first one, it blew my mind because I was so familiar with so many of the elements of it. I knew the big rock, I knew this and that, I knew the hat.
Yeah, if you've ridden the Indiana Jones ride at
Exactly.
Disneyland too, which is the best ride at Disneyland,
Yes.
far and away.
Absolutely.
I rode that back to back, and I didn't know that it changed every time you rode it.
Yeah.
And I was like, the genius to put that in a ride,
Yeah.
to make you have to go back and ride it multiple times. And you
Yeah.
still had all the fun parts from all the series.
Yeah. Waiting in line has never been better than the Indiana Jones ride.
No. Maybe, I think the only thing that came close ever was Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin.
Fair.
An
Love
amazing
it.
line
Yes.
experience.
Yes. Very, very different experiences, and that's part of why it's so wonderful. Mm-hmm. So I watched the first one. I love it. It's a classic, and I immediately get why. I'm like 16, and I'm like, oh man, this rules. And I haven't admittedly. I haven't seen tons of things, but I've seen probably more than most 16-year-olds.
Okay.
I was a movie nerd, you know?
Sure.
And I get to the second one, and the second one is my favorite. And I know it sounds so contrarian to say 2 is good and 3 is bad, because most people hate 2 and love 3.
Oh, yeah. I
Right?
had an episode about 2, like in the first 50 episodes of this podcast, I think,
Right.
years and years ago.
It's easy to hate. Get me in a room with that person, I will viciously debate them, okay? Listen, pound for pound, Short Round versus Sean Connery in a movie he doesn't like, clearly.
Ooh.
He's like, Sean Connery in Last Crusade, I'm jumping to it a little bit, but we will get back. Sean Connery in Last Crusade, it is so clearly a job. He's like, yeah, I'm James Bond, and it's I'm in this guy's movie, and oh, yeah, I'm here.
I'm just showing up.
Right?
I'm
Yeah.
saying the lines.
Right?
Upon rewatch.
Yes.
All right. And
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this movie since I was probably about, I think I might have been in high school or
yeah.
after high school when I'd
Sure.
seen it. It was pretty quickly after. But I watched this again, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the kind of movie that has a ceiling, right?
Yes.
Like, it's only gonna be so good.
Yeah.
And I think for me, and I think for a lot of people who've watched this movie and read it, written reviews over the years, I think there's a lot of people who like this movie hits a ceiling. But then when you start to watch and really like analyze, like, oh yeah, Sean Connery does kind of seem like he's phoning it in, and oh, the script isn't a very good script.
Yeah.
It's pretty corny in a way that like some of it makes sense.
Right.
Some of it, sure, it's totally fine. I
Right.
think if you're doing a family action adventure movie,
Right.
you can't really do a whole lot to make the movie not corny.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, Sean Connery has all these corny moments, and he, instead of playing them with any sort of like, I guess either leaning really in really hard,
Yeah.
and playing it straight,
Right.
or being the total antithesis of that,
Yeah.
and just being a complete goofball the whole time with these
Right.
insane lines and insane
Oh.
actions, like him shooting their own plane.
Yes. Right.
Instead of picking a side, he just kind of goes down the middle and just shows up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's weird.
Yeah. Right. Because we've seen him do what Harrison Ford is doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it would be exciting to have Sean Connery in that movie. But Sean Connery was not bringing his James Bond level charisma that Harrison Ford was definitely I mean, like, you know, he was Indiana Jones, you know, like
Oh, yeah.
So
And he still gets all the classic Indy moments. He gets he gets the things, you know, we see young Indy, we see the origin story of him and his whip and him getting his hat for the first time.
Yep.
A fun origin story. Didn't know I needed to see.
It's one of my least favorite parts of the movie, but I understand that people like it.
Wait, why is this one of your least favorite parts in the movie? Because
Okay.
we can't just leave that one on the table.
I know. I will tie this back into also close the loop on the story of me watching it for the first time. I loved, too, specifically the relationship between Short Round and Indiana Jones. I loved that the woman was a very different take than Marion in the first movie. She's kind of annoying, and that's kind of fun, because she's also not wrong. Everything she's complaining about is what we would be complaining about if we were in that situation.
She's a good audience surrogate in that way.
Exactly. And so I'm ready, and I'm like, oh, dude, at this point, it's like I'm going 3 days in a row. I'm not looking up anything about the movie I'm about to watch, so I am ready for Short Round, first of all. I am pumped to see my friend. Oh man, they are going to heighten this kid. He's going to be a little bigger. I've always loved his character in the Goonies. This is amazing.
My BFF Short Round
Right?
coming back for round 2.
I turn it on, and River Phoenix is in the circus. He's in a circus train while he's a Boy Scout? Like, what happened? Why were, like, oh yeah, first of all, we need to know how Indiana Jones grew up? I don't need that. I don't.
They also already had Young Indiana Jones, the TV series, if you wanted to find out how.
Right. Thank you.
This is for all the people who didn't watch
good.
Young Indiana Jones.
You know your stuff. I love this.
I know some things. I know a couple things here and there.
I love it. So Last Crusade, he goes into, they make a big deal about, like, I'm not afraid of snakes and stuff, and he has his little fat friend that you never hear about or see again.
Nope. He just shows up a couple times at the very, very beginning of that sequence, at the very end, to narc out Indy.
Right.
To the cops who are crooked, and they're in with I don't want to say grave robbers. I don't think that's accurate. Treasure hunters?
Sure.
Treasure hunters.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. They're not robbing
sure.
a grave. They're doing. Well, maybe they are.
Right.
I should have taken better notes during this movie.
The fact. Listen.
That I can't remember.
Exactly. You're over here name dropping Young Indiana Jones. We could probably, from memory, figure out a lot of the logic of the opening scene to the first movie. Of like, okay, there's this trap, there's this pit, they do this thing. Like we can remember, right? They fully protected this idol, and we don't know anything else about the idol, but we understand that. I could not tell you any of that stuff for that opening in 3.
Right. I could. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff that sticks with you when you think about it, other than like, oh, he pulls the whip off the lion when he's in the lion car, and there's some fun fight choreography. Of course, if you're going to do a fight sequence on a moving train or a chase sequence on a moving train,
right,
you got to have some fun choreography in there.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, the biggest payoff you get is just like, all right, we get to see where the whip comes from. We get to see why he's afraid of snakes.
Right.
And we get to see him get a hat. After basically being told, hey, you didn't best me this time, partner, but here, I'm going to give you a little tap on the shoulder and this gigantic hat that you're just going to have.
Sure, you can't have this cross, but let me give you the thing that keeps the sun out of my eyes.
Why would you, by the way, as a teenager, if you just got tricked by a man and his gang of treasure hunters, why, if he's the one who's like giving you this hat as a consolation prize, why are you keeping that hat?
Right.
Why would you do that?
What about him? Yeah, that's nail on the head right there. You know, and this whole movie is like him half being his dad and half reacting against his dad, and it's just not clear. It's like, wait, so what does this guy represent to Indiana Jones? He's the bad guy to you, but he's kind of the opposite of your dad, so you're going to kind of be him. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. You know, if you look at the movie from that perspective, the way that you just opened my eyes to, of having old Papa Jones be the villain of the movie instead of the Nazis.
Yeah.
Very different movie.
The other thing about too, people are understandably hard about some of the cultural references that makes. They're eating monkey brains. They're doing things that are incredibly outdated and unnecessary to be like.
Some may say racist. Some
Yes.
have said racist.
Yes.
Some continue to say racist.
Yeah. In fact, I'll go on record. Jay thinks it's racist. I don't have any defense of those things. But the other thing is, like, you're sitting down to watch Indiana Jones. The entire premise is a man going to steal cultural artifacts from where they belong
Yes.
to be put into a museum.
Right.
That is not part of that culture. That is the central premise. In the same way that there will be cars in a Fast and the Furious movie, it's not an Indiana Jones movie if that's not happening.
Right. The central premise of an Indiana Jones movie is something that John Oliver's going to do a segment on.
Yes,
Decades
exactly.
later.
Exactly. And so it is understandable to say that's not cool in part 2. But in part 3, he gets Hitler's autograph.
Yeah.
And they make it silly
That's
as hell.
right. They do make it very silly.
It's so silly.
I remember watching that moment and I'd forgotten that moment happened.
Yeah.
Because when you really get down to it, you have a great point about not even just from the very beginning.
Right.
There's a whole lack of memorable things in this movie. You know what the thing I remember from this movie is before I watched it again was there's a How I Met Your Mother episode that references the "you chose poorly and you chose wisely" sequence at the very end.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remembered. And it's not just because of the movie. It's because they make a whole fucking subplot out of it on How I Met Your Mother.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm so with you.
I forgot about Hitler getting an autograph.
Right.
Or signing an autograph,
Right.
rather. I forgot about Indy having weird hate sex with a German Nazi woman.
Right.
You forget about the dad, who also had sex with this woman. It is heavily implied.
Right.
Which is...
I forgot about that. Right. Absolutely. I rewatched this and I forgot that. I'm like... He's on the Hindenburg. They treat this movie like it's Indiana Jones's Forrest Gump. Oh, he's just everywhere in World War II. You know, like come on.
Yeah, this is Forrest Gump. All we needed was actually no, they were in Italy. I was gonna say we need Mussolini references, but we got Mussolini references.
That's so funny.
That's right, we did.
One of the more unforgivable silly bits to me was the tapestry impression when he pretends to be like the Scottish guy. He goes up to a German castle and is like, wait, Indiana Jones, a man with all of these skills, at least one PhD, probably several, and he's doing
a weird Scottish accent.
Right.
When also his dad's Scottish.
You were so right. How do you not just do that?
Don't just do your dad. Just be him.
So,
Indy, what are you doing?
So lame.
This movie does. I hate to say it as somebody who rewatched this movie and is like, oh yeah, this is fun.
Yeah.
This movie does reduce Indiana Jones to a caricature.
It's awful. This movie does to Indiana Jones what Indiana Jones does to other cultures.
It's a pull quote if ever I heard one. James Mangold, I hope you're watching and reconsidering everything.
And casting both of us. Neither of us would be a good fit in. Dan Aykroyd's in the first one, though.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very briefly, but like, that rules.
They have some fun, like I said, there's fun independent comedy stuff that happens in this movie. Or not independent comedy stuff, but like comedic moments.
Yeah.
But they've got
standalone moments. Sure.
Some fun standalone moments of comedy, as you would expect in a family-friendly adventure movie.
This is where I begin to disagree with you.
Fire away.
So,
disagree.
The first Indiana Jones movie sets up that kids can watch this, but also a man's face will melt at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
People will have guns.
Yeah.
They are having adult conversations. A central plot point in the first one is a drinking contest. This is not a kids' movie, but it is a movie that Spielberg has crafted that kids can fully enjoy. You know, like that's the beauty of what the needle that he was able to thread with that first movie was like, oh my God, anybody can sit down and have an incredible time.
Fewer movies are more Spielbergian than the original, than Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Absolutely.
That's practically right around the time when you can coin it.
Right. Yeah, that actually might be because like if Jaws was like his Get Out, you know, where it was like, "Oh, who's this guy?"
Yeah.
You know, like, "Oh, I'm going to see this guy." But when he does Raiders of the Lost Ark, we're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Where that was almost his Key and Peele, where it's like, "Okay, whatever this guy does, he did it out of order."
I will follow this guy to the ends of the earth.
Yeah, truly.
But yes, okay. So
The
have this
second
moment. Second movie.
they lean into the mature themes. They lean into, I think the story is that Spielberg was getting a divorce and he was in a darker place and it gets darker. I love that. And it really makes the relationship with Short Round and him work for me because it's not just silly and saccharine. He's hanging out with an orphan and trying to pretend like he's not his dad. When they're playing cards in the second one, that is sad. It is funny and it is sad that kid has gotten so good at poker and Indiana Jones is fully lost and accusing each other of cheating. He's like, he is a child and he's raising a child and this child has no dad and Indiana Jones doesn't either until the third one.
And now we have the third one.
They course correct too much. Even if I was, even if I listen, the third one is much more well loved than the second one. So the credit I have to give it is like whatever it did, people love. But I do think that things like this Scottish tapestry scene, having him fly ducks into an airplane is just like this. It's almost clever.
Yeah.
It's boring to me. It's like, ugh, what are you doing? I'll just go off on EU if I go too much further down that path, which isn't much of an argument. It's just a feeling.
But there is a sort of also, I mean, to that point.
Yeah.
There's a level of reducing Indiana Jones to like, I guess his baser qualities is probably the best way to put it, right?
Right.
Like you have this opening sequence, and I don't remember this is the way it was in the first movie, or I don't think it happens in the second movie. But in the third movie, you definitely have him teaching a class where
In the third movie, it does happen.
right, what I'm saying, where he's teaching the
I
class,
see, right.
and they're all the girls in the class are just there clearly because they're swooning over Dr. Jones,
Right.
And you have moments where he's like when he's in the desert with Sala, and they're trying to figure out like horses or camels, and he keeps yelling, "No camels." That's a thing that Indiana
Yes.
Jones would know.
Agreed.
Which is, hey, bring some camels because they're going to fare better than horses in the desert.
Right.
But he's just it seems like we're trying to get, as opposed to the kind of like cool, clever quippiness that you can get out of an action hero.
Right.
We are having moments that do seem a little bit more baked in for a laugh.
Right.
And an unearned laugh, as opposed to something where it's like this is in line with the character who we've come to learn and understand over the past couple movies and perhaps the TV show if you watched any of that.
For sure.
And instead, here we are with him complaining about horses and camels and having this weird, crazy action comedy sequence where there's, tanks flying off of cliffs almost. And
Oh, God, thinking about this movie makes me sad. I have been making fun of this movie since I was 16 years old, and I have never talked about it publicly because it genuinely makes me sad to think of what could have been. Let's talk about that classroom scene because it's a perfect example of what's wrong with the third movie to me. To me, they're course correcting too much. In the first movie, they're like, oh, let's show that like not only is he very smart, but he's kind of a cool hot professor.
Yeah.
There's one girl in the front row who closes her eyes and has "I love you" on her eyelids. And it's like, oh, one of his students has a crush. There's a whole story told in that one moment.
Yeah.
Because writing "I love you" on your eyelids is not the first move you do to your professor.
absolutely not.
Right?
It is a third or fourth move.
Yeah.
This is you're trying to make a pass and you're trying to make sure he knows that you're making a pass.
And that also implies to us Indiana Jones probably has like smiled through it, been a little flattered, and also knew not to let it go any further. So
Right.
she's probably thinking like, gotta heighten this. I
Also,
gotta
she
be
got a
clear.
friend to help out with that.
Yeah, there's no way.
There's
she
no
was
way
like-
she's yeah.
Yeah. In the third movie, so the second movie doesn't do that at all,
No.
right? They don't visit the university, and I love that rather than going for the iconic Ark of the Covenant or
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail. Thank
Yeah.
you. I was like Crusade. It's not Crusade. It's Holy Grail.
They
Thank you.
found the last crusade.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's why I was getting messed up. They do an item that I think is completely made up. It might be based on something kind of.
Take a look at that real quick.
They're like the stones. They're definitely not iconic in the way that it's like, oh, you mean the central things in the Bible? Like that's not
right.
And it's intentionally doing that. So then the third movie course corrects too much by being like, why don't we go for the most iconic thing?
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know. The thing that was fun about the first movie is that it wasn't that he was looking for the 10 Commandments. He was looking for the thing that holds the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
That distinction adds a lot for me.
Yeah.
That makes it feel like this is a movie about history.
Right.
The Holy Grail is not something that I know for a fact exists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how much of a where does that exist in reality? I don't know.
I don't know.
You know,
I guess it depends on how much of a biblical scholar you are, and how much that exists, and how much. But that's the thing.
But the joy is that he's a biblical scholar.
Right.
He knows that stuff.
He's
knows that teaching
stuff.
me that stuff. And so the third movie, when they do the classroom scene after the terrible circus thing, and then they cut to him on a rainy boat where he's punching the guy that gave him a hat all those years ago, and then he's at the school that he works at. And this time, students are rabid. And it's like, what?
all over him.
Whose fantasy is this?
Their eyes are practically popping out of their head.
Right.
Hearts beating out of their chest.
Yeah,
like
they are full cartoon
like a
wolf.
Looney Tunes.
That's
yeah.
right. So to me, it's like they course corrected with the okay, we gotta do everything in the first movie bigger and sillier. And it's like, oh, none of that was on my checklist of what I was hoping for from this movie.
Now, we should talk because, like you said, this is one of the most, out of the entire franchise, one of the most beloved entries.
Yeah.
Top two, maybe top one in some people's eyes.
It's often what people say is a favorite. And it's a decent choice for a favorite. One is too obvious. People hate two.
But that's the thing. People forget one was nominated for Best Picture.
Well deserved. If you watch that movie, my God.
Yeah. It's a great movie. It's very entertaining. It hits all the right notes.
Yeah.
It's a popcorn blockbuster classic.
Yeah.
And this movie has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Are we talking 1 or 3?
3.
Okay.
This is the critical consensus according to Rotten Tomatoes. Lighter and more comedic than its predecessor, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade returns the series to the brisk serial adventure of raiders while adding a dynamite double act between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery.
Disagree.
I don't think that we need the double act of Harrison Ford and Sean Connery to be the comedic centerpiece of the film.
Who wanted that?
I don't know. I feel like, again, this is something I feel like it could have been solved more if Sean Connery had been... I'm going to make a directorial call here on behalf of Steven Spielberg.
Please. We know better than him.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right. I think that if Sean Connery had played this Leslie Nielsen level straight...
Yes!
Then we would have gotten somewhere, I think.
Absolutely. Rather than going in and doing silly Scottish accents, like if they had gone in as exterminators or something and just been like completely serious and just been like, no, we need to check this castle.
Yeah.
And I know exterminators, blah, blah, blah. But like, my point is just like, yeah, if they had gone in that seriously, they could have been so much funnier.
Yes. And also, I mean, even in the example you riffed right there, having them show up as exterminators to a Nazi castle, the layer,
Right.
just that additional, just like one set. It's like, you think about that and you're like, oh, wow. They're really, like, that's quite a move.
Right.
It's deep.
Right.
But this movie doesn't have that kind of a depth that you just invented on the fly. That's how easy it is. This movie, yeah, I mean, it's gotten a lot of really glowing reviews over the years. Jay Boyar, shout out to the other Jays out there, of the Orlando Sentinel, said that while the film lacks the novelty of Raiders and the breathless pacing of Temple of Doom, it was an entertaining capper to the trilogy.
I agree with everything but the last part.
Peter Travers of Rolling Stone remarked the film was the wildest and wittiest indie of them all.
He was rushing to hit a deadline and he didn't care. I have read great reviews from him, and that is not one of them. Are you kidding me? Come on, he probably did not watch the movie. That sounds like the book report you read bullshitting.
I'm trying to find the Roger Ebert review of this movie because I do love a Roger Ebert review.
He's my favorite.
Even though I disagree with him a lot.
Always, yes,
a lot.
dude. But it's like having a great friend who it's like, I always want to know what you have to say. I'm almost never on the same page with him.
Yeah, but he's just, he's really fun to read. All right. He gave this movie 3.5 out of 4 stars. Okay. This is how he... This is classic old Roger Ebert. This is how the review starts. There's a certain style of illustration that appeared in the boys' adventure magazines of the 1940s, in those innocent publications that have been replaced by magazines on punk lifestyles and movie monsters. Hates Fangoria. The illustrations were always about the same. They showed a small group of swarthy men hovering over a treasure trove with greedy grins on their bearded faces, while in the foreground, 2 teenage boys peered out from behind a rock in wonder and astonishment. The point of view was always over the boys' shoulders. The reader was invited to share this forbidden glimpse into the secret world of men. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade begins with just such a scene. Director Steven Spielberg must have been paging through his old issues of Boy's Life and thrilling wonder tales down in the basement. As I watched it, I felt a real delight because recent Hollywood escapist movies have become too jaded and cynical, and they have lost the feeling that you can stumble over astounding adventures just by going on a hike with your scout troop.
The things I want to say to Ebert would be disrespectful to a dead man. I'm going to fully nerd out here.
Nerd away.
I am obsessed with all of this stuff. My dad was obsessed with pop culture in general. I grew up reading pulp novels, pulp comics. I could tell you the history of EC Comics.
Ooh.
Not DC Comics.
EC
Comics, who did the Crypt Keeper and such. That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
And the thing about the history of this kind of, I don't know, medium genre, et cetera, is that it would go harder. If you look at old Dick Tracy things, right? The first panels of Dick Tracy involves an equivalent of Al Capone holding a blowtorch to a man's feet.
Oh.
And I say that to say this is the same comic strip with prune face. Like, it's like, this is silly and serious.
Yeah.
It's both. And
I think we're allowed to have both, too.
absolutely.
I think both is totally... It happens in the first Indiana Jones.
Exactly. They nail it in the first one.
Mm-hmm. The second one, you still get a little bit of that.
Right.
I mean, who else is short round?
Absolutely.
And if not
They
just
want
wonderful
monkey
comedic
brains to
relief.
be funny, even if that's not fun.
Ooh. But here we are with this slate of, everybody just praising and loving this movie. And we get a couple people who are trying to distance themselves from that. We have some panning that goes on.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it looks like all these reviews have been scrubbed from the internet.
They probably got tired of the hate mail.
But we got Andrew Saris of the New York Observer who panned this, David Denby, Stanley Kaufman, Georgia
Brave.
Brown.
This is pure bravery. These names should be said with honor.
Yes. Hal Hinson from the Washington Post
said,
Jonathan Rosenbaum said this is soulless.
Agreed.
Well,
that is the perfect word, actually.
I think that
if there was a
sums it up
one-word
pretty nice.
review, that's absolutely how I feel.
Hal Hinson from the Washington Post says it's nearly all chases and dull exposition. He felt the film's exploration of Jones's character took away his mystery and that Spielberg should not have tried to mature his storytelling. Also, 2 days later, a review in the Washington Post from a different reviewer praised the film's adventure and action as well as the father-son relationship's thematic depth. Is it thematic depth to be like, hey, did we fuck the same lady? Is that thematic depth?
You
we
named
learning
yourself
anything?
after our dog.
Yeah.
Right, that's depth right there.
That's depth.
That's absolutely depth.
Yeah, that's not just a ham-fisted comedy. That's depth.
Oh, God. Okay, I want to talk about criteria for how I am judging this movie.
Okay.
Because we've already established and I've already acknowledged that this movie is beloved,
Right.
and power to those folks that love it. Clearly, I'm coming at this with a different set of criteria.
Sure.
What I think a great sequel does, okay? I think that the first movie has to be perfect. It has to be, in a trilogy, let's say, it has to be completely bulletproof, story-wise, concept-wise. The second one gets to be a little weirder.
Yeah.
You are already on board.
Right.
You already know the characters, and anything that didn't quite fit into that bulletproof structure that you had to have for the first one is spilling over to the second one.
Yes.
And oftentimes by a third movie, there's kind of a, okay, now what? And you end up in a circus train.
I think this is actually kind of a great segue into
perfect.
How would you, if you were given the chance to change this movie, what would you change?
Jay, thank you so much for asking that, because I have a different talking point that I'm absolutely going to link this to.
Perfect. Segues upon
Again,
segues.
Full nerd right here, just for you. I over the pandemic, I had a series of different obsessions, as we all did.
Of course.
One of mine became a very particular type of retro video game called a point-and-click adventure, which they used to be called adventure games.
Like Monkey Island.
Yes, exactly.
Day of the Tentacle, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
did you grow up on those?
I did not, but
That's fine. You are familiar.
I'm familiar.
Great.
I saw a lot of people talking about it on G4. There was a renaissance. Grim
Yes.
Fandango got a lot of references for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So if you don't know what this is, it's what in 1990, the version of something like Breath of the Wild would have been. You know, like it's like this was how you would get the feeling of an adventure in a video game. And it mostly meant pick up key and then use key on door.
Right.
And very simple puzzles that gives them kind of a slow pace that hasn't aged well, unfortunately, but they are gorgeous. Because it's so slow, they had to have these really detailed layouts. You mentioned Monkey Island,
Yes.
okay? And Ron Gilbert is like the mind behind Monkey Island. And he also is part of 2 Indiana Jones games, both of which represent some of the best examples in the genre of point-and-click adventure games.
Okay.
The first one is The Last Crusade.
Okay.
People love it. I haven't played it because I don't like this movie.
Fair.
I hear it's great. I hear the puzzles are wonderful. I hear the story is very much enriched by the way they do this, et cetera, et cetera. To me, that's a first draft. Because after that, Ron Gilbert gets to make Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Okay.
And this is basically an entire Indiana Jones movie. And it does the thing that you specifically said you loved about the Disney ride. Keep in mind that video games at this point, the idea of action in video games is very different. You know, this is like spaceship moving side to side,
Sure.
platformers. There's a lot of that in like the forefront, exciting action area of video games.
Right.
Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. First of all, Fate of Atlantis, like the hook is clear. I'm in. I get it. It is exactly that kind of historical. Is it real? Is it not? That kind of like exploration is so fun and rich. And it opens on your Indiana Jones and you fall through a ceiling.
Oh. A good,
And
way,
you're
a
like-
good way to open up.
Right? You're like, where am I? And you're exploring the space, so it's like teaching you how to use the game, and you realize you are in a storage room in the university that you work in. So then I'm hooked into this world immediately. Very quickly, you meet a love interest, and soon you're presented with 3 options. There's 3 paths to play this game, okay?
Oh, that's okay. That's fun.
Right?
I like this.
Right?
This is some old, like, I feel like you don't have a lot of this kind of gameplay style in games of that era.
Absolutely.
So already I'm like intrigued.
Right. And this was innovative. This was a selling point of the game. This was not a trope that is surprising that we kind of have forgotten about. This was like, oh my God, they did that? One of the paths was very focused on fighting, okay? If what you liked was the fighting system in the game, which was closer to like Punch Out or something than Tekken, you know? Like it was simple.
Okay.
But if that was your thing,
Sure.
you had a whole storyline that you could complete the entire game mostly through fights.
Okay.
There was one that was mostly puzzles. And that choice involved you saying to the love interest, you go off and do your own thing. I'm going this path. And then you meet up with her again at the end. During Act 3.
Sure.
You know, Act 2 is where most of the
puzzling happens.
the different paths, whatever it is,
whatever
right?
the convergence is. Gotcha.
At the end of the day, any of the
Divergence, rather,
paths,
yes.
you're going to end up in Atlantis trying to do the thing,
Right.
right? And she will meet up with you because she's been on her own path. That, you know what that path is if you play the game multiple times, because path 3 is very story-based. It's you two having a kind of like flirtatious arguments, some puzzles, some fights, but it's kind of just like, if you want an Indiana Jones movie, there's the path for you.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
when you are in Atlantis, there's like this kind of labyrinth that you have to navigate.
Uh-huh.
Every time that you play the game, it was randomized, so it would be the locations were different, the guards were moving differently, which was advanced stuff.
Yeah.
All of this to say, how would I change this? I would either make that a movie, and knowing that that's not possible, I would say that if you have any interest in Indiana Jones, you need to go play Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. It's fun. It is ambitious. It's dated, but also like don't be afraid to use a walkthrough. You know what I mean? Like those games are made.
Go to GameFAQs, load up
Boom.
your thing.
Absolutely.
I guess technically, by the way, I think it's supposed to be pronounced Game FAQs, but I always just said GameFAQs.
Absolutely.
It makes sense when you
Right.
realize what an FAQ stands for.
Right,
But I just said
absolutely.
GameFAQs. Show me the game
I'm in.
facts.
Right. Show me the game facts,
I have one
please.
final question.
Yes.
And this is for folks like you who
Yeah.
have been afraid to talk about that they hate Indiana Jones and the Last
Yeah.
Crusade.
Absolutely.
If people hate that, what should they watch instead? What do you recommend?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That is quite a choice.
Yes.
Okay. Why? Because that movie I recall liking when I was a teenager, and I feel like it wouldn't hold up now in my brain. But I
Yeah.
could be misremembering.
No, listen. If you're going to watch a bad Sean Connery movie, which I think Part 3 is, and you want it to be an adventure movie, and you want it to, I don't know, do the Indiana Jones thing, there's Sean Connery, you have basically the Avengers of pulp novels of this time, right? The plot of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is the character that Indiana Jones is based on, Alan Quatermain. Like literally, it's Alan Quatermain, who was like a popular pulp novel that
Right.
like is basically Indiana Jones.
Okay.
You have the Invisible Man from the novels.
Yep.
You have one of the wives of Dracula.
Yep.
You have Tom Sawyer.
Quite a pull. I do remember watching that movie and being like, "Wow, this is fun."
It's so funny. They got Tom Sawyer. It's like, yeah, they definitely got that public domain character
Yeah.
that has said the N-word more than we have. Doesn't say it in the movie, thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah. Can you imagine? There should have been a scene where he looks to camera and is like, in my youth, I said some unfortunate things. And my friend Huck Finn and I learned some valuable lessons.
If that movie came out in 2024 instead of 2004, we definitely would have gotten that for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, listen, the movie is a hunk of junk, but if you go in knowing that, you won't be disappointed, which I cannot say about The Last Crusade.
That is such a nice bow to tie on this episode, Ian.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad that you were able to finally speak your truth today.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
happy
you
to-
for giving me that
To
platform.
give you that platform, to give you that space.
Yes.
And if there are other people out there just
Mm-hmm.
like you and they want to connect with you, where's the best place they can do it?
If you agree with me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. I do a monthly show at the Alamo Draft House called Protected Under Parody, where we parody movies. That's in downtown LA. Come out to that. The If you don't agree with me, I am all about civil discussions and feedback, and I would encourage you to email Jay, and he can.
Yep.
Yeah, just don't talk to me directly about that. Let it go through him.
Go through me.
Yeah,
I will forward all your correspondence
Yes.
onto Ian.
Yes,
I will carry.
I will mark them as spam. I won't see them, but I do want you to feel like you can get what you're saying out.
Oh no,
okay?
I'm gonna do printouts. I'm gonna have a big old. I'm gonna have a big old sack.
Miracle on 34th Street.
Yep.
You're just pouring the.
Dump it. If you haven't already, please follow at Blockbusting Pod on all the social media platforms. Consider subscribing on YouTube and on Patreon. Patreon, you get access to bonus episodes, bonus content, the full JFlix streaming library.
Ooh.
I got, like I said a couple episodes ago, I got Taskmaster season 14 going up in there right now.
Wow.
You watch Taskmaster?
Yeah, dude. I love Taskmaster.
You seem like somebody who would love Taskmaster.
I'm jealous of Taskmaster.
Me too.
Right?
It's so brilliant.
We should talk.
We should talk.
Man, because that was something I discovered over quarantine was Taskmaster.
Same.
Yeah. And
It's a great quarantine show. But just a great television show in general. Anyway, season
truly.
14 going up on JFlix now, so subscribe at $5 a month if you want to get access to that.
That's amazing.
I do what I can. And Ian, thanks again for doing what you could and coming here today.
Absolutely. Anything to make sure people know this movie sucks.
This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change. Okay.